The classroom buzzed with whispers and stifled laughs. Rows of desks, cluttered with notebooks and textbooks, filled the room where a dozen students watched with skeptical eyes. "All right, Ethan," Mr. Callister's voice sliced through the chatter, sharp, dripping with doubt. "You think you're some kind of genius? Here's an impossible engine problem even my best students couldn't solve." He pointed to a broken engine model resting on the lab table, cold under the harsh in-classroom lights. "This engine, no one has managed to fix it. Let's see if you can even make it work." Laughter rippled among the students. Faded jeans, nervous glances, and a 13-year-old boy standing in front of the class. Most didn't believe he had a chance. But Ethan didn't flinch. His eyes narrowed, heartbeat steady. The room fell silent, the challenge hanging heavy. Like the smell of textbooks and chalk dust. 5 seconds, that's all it took. Ethan, at 13, he was smaller than most of the mechanics who filled the room, his worn-out jeans frayed at the edges, and a faded jacket that had seen better days. His dark hair was tousled, and his hands bore faint traces of grease, a silent testament to countless hours spent tinkering alone in his family's small garage. Ethan wasn't just another kid hoping to impress. He carried a quiet hunger. Ever since he was little, he'd been fascinated by engines, the way metal parts came together in perfect harmony, the intricate dance of pistons and valves, the hidden logic beneath the noise. His dream wasn't just to fix cars, but to master the impossible, to prove to everyone who dismissed him that age and size didn't measure talent or determination. Yet, despite his passion, Ethan was often overlooked. The older mechanics saw him as a kid, a curiosity at best, a nuisance at worst. Whispers followed him. Too young, no experience, won't last a day. Even Mr. Callister, the imposing teacher with his sharp suits and sharper tongue, treated him like a joke. But Ethan's quiet confidence didn't come from their approval. It came from the steady beat of his own belief and the countless hours spent learning in silence. Today, that belief was about to be tested. The laughter in the workshop wasn't just noise. It was a sharp blade, aimed directly at Ethan. Each chuckle, each mocking glance chipped away at his calm facade. Mr. Callister, with his perfectly pressed suit and icy stare, paced slowly toward the battered engine in the corner of the room. "So, Ethan," he began, voice thick with condescension, "you think you can fix this relic? Even my top mechanics gave up. Said it was beyond saving." Ethan's stomach twisted. He'd heard words like these before, not just from Callister, but from everyone who saw him as less skilled, less capable, less deserving. He wanted to say something, to shout that he'd spent nights studying repair manuals, watching videos, taking apart and rebuilding the engines in his father's small garage, that he understood things others never bothered to learn. But the room was filled with skeptics. And words alone wouldn't prove anything. Callister's eyes locked onto Ethan's, sharp and calculating. "This engine has problems you can't even imagine. Sabotage, bad wiring, and a mess of tangled hoses. It's a puzzle no one solved." "What makes you think you're different?" A cold weight settled in Ethan's chest. The spotlight wasn't just on the engine. It was on him, a boy whose every move was being judged. The fear of failure clawed at his mind. What if he couldn't fix it? What if he became the joke of the lab? The thought of humiliation, of being the center of ridicule, made his hands tremble just slightly. But beneath the anxiety, something stronger stirred, a fierce determination to prove them wrong. Not for pride, not for glory, but to finally silence the doubts that had followed him for so long. He glanced around. Cameras were already rolling. The crew was whispering, their smirks telling stories, before a single tool had been lifted. The stakes were higher than ever. This wasn't just a test of skill. It was a trial by fire, watched by dozens of eyes, many hoping he would fail spectacularly. Ethan's mind raced through every detail he'd memorized. The engine's history, the previous repair attempts, the strange symptoms it showed. Something wasn't right. And he knew it wasn't just mechanical. There was a hidden fault, a secret flaw that had stumped experts, but he was alone against the crowd, fighting both the complexity of the engine and the crushing weight of expectation. Just. Admit it, kid, sneered one mechanic from the back. You're out of your league. Go back to playing with toy cars. The words hit harder than any blow. Ethan clenched his fists, feeling the sting of every doubter's voice echo in his mind. He wanted to retreat, to disappear into the shadows where no one would watch him fail. But deep inside, a quiet voice whispered, "This is your moment," he breathed. In the thick, oily air, feeling the rough texture of the workbench beneath his fingers, the hum of the fluorescent light seemed to slow, every sound fading into the background except the steady thump of his heartbeat. Ethan's thoughts turned inward, battling the swirling storm of doubt and courage. What if I can't do it? He wondered. What if all those hours, all the dreams, were just foolishness? But then images flashed in his mind. His father's patient hands guiding him, the late nights spent learning, the small victories no one saw. No, he told himself, firmly, I won't be just another failure. The engine waited silently, its cold metal shell hiding secrets. And Ethan knew this was more than a machine. It was the battleground for every fear and hope he carried. Mr. Callister's voice snapped him back. 5 minutes, that's all you get. The room tightened, eyes burning into him like 1,000 spotlights. Ethan swallowed hard, feeling the pressure squeeze his chest. But with one steady step forward, he reached out and placed his hands on the engine surface. The moment was set. What happened next would change everything. Ethan's hands hovered over the engine, the cold metal sending a chill up his arms. The workshop seemed to hold its breath. Every pair of eyes was fixed on him. Some filled with doubt, others with thinly veiled amusement. A few, though rare, held a flicker of curiosity. The voices from moments ago still echoed in his ears. You're too young. You don't belong here. Go back to your toys. He tried to block them out, but the words gnawed at him like relentless shadows. His mind drifted back to the quiet garage at home. The soft hum of the radio playing old rock classics, the warm, worn hands of his father guiding his own as they disassembled an engine piece by piece. Those stolen hours after school were where he felt most alive, not surrounded by sneers and judgment, but by tools and possibilities. You're smarter than this engine. You just have to listen. Ethan's gaze flicked down to his fingers. Small, calloused from practice, yet precise and steady. The same fingers that had painstakingly repaired his old bicycle, rebuilt his father's lawnmower, and pieced together engines that others deemed hopeless. But here, under the harsh lights and unforgiving stares, that history felt fragile, like a secret treasure he dared not reveal. "Come on, kid," sneered one mechanic, wiping grease off his hands. "We've seen this before. Bright eyes, no skills. You're wasting everyone's time." A ripple of laughter followed, tightening the knot in Ethan's chest. But before he could respond, a voice from the side cut through the tension. "Give him a chance," said Marcus, a young apprentice who'd quietly watched Ethan from the sidelines before. His voice was calm but firm, standing out like a steady anchor in the storm. Marcus was one of the few who saw past Ethan's age and clothes. He'd grown up nearby, knew the boy's story, and admired his quiet determination. "If anyone can figure this out, it's him." Ethan caught Marcus's eye and gave a small nod of thanks, a brief connection in a sea of doubt. But Mr. Callister wasn't done. His sharp gaze sliced through the room. 5 minutes, Ethan, and don't embarrass yourself." Ethan swallowed hard and turned his attention back to the engine. The maze of wires, hoses, and corroded parts sprawled before him like a puzzle designed to defeat. His mind raced, flickering between logic and memory. The last mechanic who worked on this said the wiring was a nightmare, but he never checked. The fuel line. A sudden flicker of doubt crept in. What if the sabotage was more than just bad wiring? What if the problem was deeper, hidden beneath layers of neglect? The weight of every skeptical glance pressed down on him. The crowd was no longer just watching. They were waiting for him to fail. The camera zoomed in, capturing every hesitant breath, every twitch of his fingers. Time slowed. Ethan's heart thundered louder than the machines surrounding him. And then, amidst the pressure, a memory surfaced. His father's voice, steady, and patient, teaching him to listen to the engine, not just see it. Engines don't lie, his father had said. They tell you exactly what's wrong if you're willing to listen. Ethan closed his eyes for a moment, tuning out the crowd, the noise, the doubt. He placed his palm gently on the engine's surface, feeling the subtle vibrations beneath the cold steel. A faint rhythm emerged, irregular but telling. His fingers traced the fuel lines, the throttle linkage, the spark plugs. Then, almost imperceptibly, he detected a subtle resistance, a blockage hiding in the fuel pump. His breath hitched. Could this be it? Suddenly, the workshop's sounds grew louder, voices murmuring, tools clattering, cameras clicking, all blending into a tense symphony. Callister's smirk faltered, replaced by a flicker of curiosity. Even the snickering mechanics leaned in closer, sensing something was shifting. But Ethan's mind was a battlefield. Doubt still flickered in the back of his thoughts. What if I'm wrong? What if this just wastes their time and confirms their doubts? He remembered his mother's encouraging words from the night before when he'd stayed up late tinkering. You have a gift, Ethan. Don't let anyone dim it. He breathed deeply, grounding himself. With a quick, practiced motion, he reached into his pocket and pulled out a small wrench, worn from years of use. He began loosening a bolt on the fuel pump, careful not to rush, mindful of every sound. A collective hush fell over the room. Minutes ticked by, each one stretching longer than the last. Suddenly, the engine coughed, a rough, sputtering sound, breaking the silence. Ethan's eyes lit up. Encouraged, he adjusted a valve, tightening the lines he'd traced earlier. Then, with a slow twist of the ignition key, the engine groaned. The room froze. Then, in a burst of roaring life, the engine sprang to life, steady, powerful, undeniable. Gasps echoed through the workshop. Callister's mouth opened slightly, as if to speak, but no words came. The older mechanics exchanged stunned looks. Even some of the snickering apprentices stepped back, respect replacing mockery. Marcus grinned, clapping Ethan on the shoulder. Told you! Ethan allowed himself a brief smile, not for the praise, but because he had proved something deeper, that his passion, patience, and quiet hours alone had prepared him for this moment. As the engine rumbled steady, Ethan realized this was just the beginning. There would be more challenges, more doubts, more tests, but now the impossible had a new name, and it was his. Ethan's hands hovered over the ignition switch, the weight of every eye in the workshop pressing down like a physical force. The engine's cold metal frame vibrated softly beneath his fingers, a silent beast waiting to be awakened, or silenced forever. The room was utterly still. Even the usual background noises, the hum of fluorescent lights, distant footsteps, the clatter of tools, had faded into an eerie silence. All that existed was Ethan, the impossible engine, and the crushing expectation that tethered him like an invisible chain. His breath came slow and deliberate. He closed his eyes for a moment, willing the swirling storm of fear and doubt inside him to settle. This is it, he thought. This is the moment you've prepared for. Every late night, every scraped knuckle, every whispered insult. His mind raced through every detail of the engine's anatomy, every lesson his father had taught him, every problem he had solved in secret, away from the world's mocking eyes. Feel the rhythm. Listen to the pulse. The engine speaks if you truly hear. Ethan's fingers brushed over the cool metal, feeling the subtle tremors beneath the surface. A faint pulse, irregular yet alive, vibrated like the heartbeat of a living thing. His heart beat in sync, slow and steady now, matching the engine's silent rhythm. He opened his eyes. The glow of the workshop lights caught in his dark irises, reflecting a mixture of resolve and vulnerability. Sweat trickled down his temple, warm against the cool air. They're all watching. The sneers, the laughter, the cold judgment, all faded into the background as he steadied his hands. You don't need their approval. Ethan reached for the ignition key, the metal cool and familiar in his grip. His fingers tightened around it, then paused. The silence stretched, thick and suffocating. Then, with a slow twist, the key turned. For a heartbeat, nothing happened. The engine remained still, silent as a slumbering giant. Ethan's pulse quickened. Doubt whispered cruelly, "What if you failed?" But he pressed forward, leaning closer, eyes scanning the engine's intricate parts. The faint smell of gasoline, hot metal and oil filled his nostrils, grounding him in the moment. Then, a cough. A rough, raspy sound broke the stillness, like the engine awakening from a deep sleep. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Ethan's breath caught, heart hammering. The engine sputtered again, louder this time, shaking with tentative life. The tension was palpable, a tightrope stretched taut over an abyss. He glanced up briefly and caught Mr. Callister's gaze, sharp, skeptical, yet flickering with something, almost like disbelief. "Keep steady, don't falter." Ethan's hands moved with newfound confidence. He adjusted the choke, gently tightened a loose fuel line, then positioned the throttle with delicate precision. A sudden roar exploded from the engine, steady and powerful, filling the room with a commanding presence. The workshop erupted in stunned silence, broken only by the engine's deep, rhythmic growl. Ethan closed his eyes briefly, letting the sound wash over him like a tide of victory and relief. "I did it." But amid the triumph, an emotional wave surged through him. Years of being underestimated, ignored, doubted, all crashing in this singular moment. He remembered the nights, spent alone, surrounded by grease and parts, the quiet voice of his father encouraging him to never give up. He thought of the friends who had believed in him, like Marcus, the rare allies in a sea of skepticism, and he thought of himself, the boy who refused to be defined by others' limits. The engine's hum filled the air, steady and sure. Ethan took a deep breath, heart swelling with a fierce, quiet pride. Around him, the atmosphere shifted. The mocking smiles faded, replaced by wide eyes and whispered astonishment. One by one, the mechanics began nodding, respect blooming like a slow sunrise. Mr. Callister's smirk vanished, replaced by a rare, approving glance. Ethan's gaze swept the room, no longer just a boy in worn jeans, but a master of the impossible. The weight of the moment settled in, and with it, a promise to himself. This was only the beginning. The engine's steady rumble filled the workshop, its deep, powerful pulse shaking the air. For a long moment, no one moved. The usual cacophony of the autolab, the clangs, the chatter, the mocking laughter, had vanished, replaced by an almost reverent silence. Then, slowly, the stunned silence gave way to whispers. "Did you see that?" one mechanic murmured, eyes wide. "He actually fixed it." Another breathed, shaking his head in disbelief. Mr. Callister stood motionless, his sharp gaze fixed on Ethan, a rare flicker of respect, softening his usually stern expression. The arrogance that had dominated the room moments before had evaporated, replaced by a grudging acknowledgement. "Not bad, kid," Callister said quietly, his voice steady but less biting than before. "You surprised me." The words carried weight, a nod from the toughest critic in the room. Ethan's chest swelled. He met Callister's eyes, seeing for the first time not disdain, but recognition. Around the workshop, the atmosphere shifted, palpably. The older mechanics, who had once sneered and whispered dismissively, now approached cautiously, offering nods of approval or tentative smiles. Marcus clapped Ethan on the shoulder, beaming. "Told you, you've got what it takes." A few of the apprentices who had been skeptical now exchanged glances filled with newfound respect. The crowd that had been poised to witness failure was now gathered to witness a quiet victory. Ethan felt the weight of all those stares, no longer heavy with doubt, but charged with admiration. Yet amid the cheers, Ethan remained humble. He knew this moment was not just about him. It was about every quiet, overlooked dreamer fighting to prove their worth. The engine's steady hum was a soundtrack to transformation, signaling a change not just in the machine, but in the hearts of those present. Callister finally broke the silence again, his tone measured but sincere. "Keep this up, and maybe you'll make a real mechanic yet." The teasing edge was gone. Instead, there was encouragement, an invitation to grow. Ethan nodded, a small smile tugging at his lips. He glanced around the room, catching eyes that once dismissed him, but now sought his attention. For the first time, he belonged here, and, as the crowd slowly dispersed, the lesson was clear. Sometimes, the impossible isn't about the task, it's about the courage to try. In the days after that unforgettable moment, Ethan felt the world around him shift. The whispers that once carried doubt now spoke of possibility. The same hands that had trembled with nervousness now moved with confidence and purpose. He realized something profound. This wasn't just about fixing an engine. It was about breaking free from the limits others had placed on him, the labels of too young, too inexperienced, and not good enough. The victory was a testament to his belief in himself, forged through years of quiet dedication and relentless practice. Ethan's newfound respect opened doors he had only dreamed of. Mr. Callister, once a harsh critic, began mentoring him personally, sharing knowledge, challenges, and the kind of tough lessons that only experience can teach. Other mechanics started inviting him to collaborate on projects, seeking his insights rather than dismissing his ideas. More importantly, Ethan discovered a deep sense of belonging. He wasn't just a boy trying to prove himself anymore. He was a valued part of a community, connected by passion and respect. His identity was no longer tied to doubt or dismissal, but to growth, potential, and resilience. Through this journey, Ethan learned that true strength comes not from others' approval, but from trusting your own journey, and that sometimes the greatest victories happen when you face the impossible head-on. Ethan's story reminds us all, no matter the doubts, the challenges, or the voices that say you can't, your passion and perseverance can shatter limits and surprise the world. If you've ever faced an impossible challenge, share your story below. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell so you never miss a moment of inspiration. Remember, the impossible is only a challenge waiting to be conquered.